All right, we are officially broadcasting. We're gonna give a few minutes for attendees to file in, and I will share this.
Perfect. We'll just give it a few more minutes and let some other people join, and we'll get started shortly.
I am seeing Paul Francisco as an attendee, so I'm bringing him into panelists.
Great.
There we go.
All right, they're all here. So we'll go ahead and get started. Buenas tardes and welcome to the Latina Summit Menace Allies panel. My name is Laura Regus Alvarez, and I am the co-chair for the Women of Alpha Boston. Before we start, I have a few housekeeping items to share with you. Please note that this session will be recorded and you'll be able to find it about half an hour after it's over in our landing page. We'll link to that in case you want to share it. And please make sure that you follow us and share photos and videos about your experiences in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by tagging us at Alpha Boston. And if you have any questions, please make sure to use the chat or use the Q&A feature. I'd like to thank our amazing speakers and panelists for joining us today and for accepting this invitation, and our keynote speakers later also for being here. I'd like to personally thank Lawler Kang for moderating today's conversation. We have a very exciting panel of very great allies in today's session. So without any further comments, Lawler, please get us started.
Thank you so much, Laura. Hello, everyone out there. Hope you're having a great day. I'm going to plunge right in because we got a lot of stuff to cover today. I've divided up my questions by role, or I'm sorry, by theme, and I like maybe just 2 responses per question. Some will be directed to certain panelists, others will be just open. So if it's open, just jump in and add your 2 cents if you want to. So the first theme I'd like to start off with is the role of allies. There's been a rise in media and attention on the role of allies, and there are varying viewpoints on what should be expected of them. How do you define an ally, and how do you have any and do you have any guiding principles in terms of what should be expected of them? And if you can, maybe, where do you see the role of allies heading? And I'd like to start off with Frank for this one, if you're ready, Frank.
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you, Lala. Appreciate the invite to be here with the group today. And allies, as I'll say, a white straight male, means to me to be willing to help people in groups of people that need to have barriers broken down, kind of help them break them down. And I think kind of in a position of leadership, and then among kind of my cohorts as well as wider cohorts, I can be a voice of leadership. I can be a voice of support. I can kind of explain how it's for the greater good of the company in our case, or the greater good of society, if you think about it even more philosophically, and kind of be there as I guess somewhat of an outside voice, but doing it from the inside and kind of adding credibility and power to the overall effort.
Fantastic. Paul, anything to add to that?
Good afternoon, everyone. When I started this, I think Frank captured it pretty well, but what I would add to that is, I look at allies and allyship as a verb. It's a proactive, intentional, I would say, sort of view of and actions that you need to take in order to leverage your influence, your privilege, and your positioning to lift others' voices, to partner, to empathize with their plight, but also to partner in sort of finding solutions, right? And whether it is individually, systemically. And I was part of a recent conversation where they describe the different types of allyship, right? So there is the, I think they call it the researcher, the person that sort of looks at an issue and a topic and tries to educate themselves around, you know, what the issue is, and then sort of tries to get themselves aligned with what they need to do. So they do a lot of thinking, and yes, there is some activity. There's the cheerleader, as Frank said, right, using their voice to amplify others' voices. There's the co-conspirator, that person that says, hey, I see some inequities here. I see some things that are not right, and I want to partner with you in helping to break down those barriers and those sort of systemic issues, or to help sort of bring this to light in a different way. So I think that's what I think of when I think of allyship. And so bringing it back to, it is an active, intentional sort of effort.
That is awesome. Thank you both. That is just great. The next theme I want to cover real quickly are ERGs, or whatever proxy you want to call them. They can be a powerful means to culture change. Please share 2 or 3 takeaways from your experiences and how to best use them, specifically for allies, if you have an allies ERG, and if not, take your pick of whatever other ones you might want to mention here. Also, if you can, how do you measure their impact and or make the case for dollars and sponsorships? And this is an open question to everybody.
So I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I think ERGs, when we think about their role in a company and how allies fit in, is it's primarily, or at least a chief component of it, is about education. It's a safe space for allies to learn about a particular group, you know, if they're beginning on their ally journey, and it goes all the way to helping them like be an advocate or be a voice for you know, for that particular group. So, you know, I like to kind of view ERGs as a bit of like an engine of change, like within a company. Like they're the folks who are going to be bubbling up like some of those issues that you know, just others might not know about, including allies. So so allies really are an integral part of that journey. When you think about measurement, or you think about like making the business case, you can kind of look at it in a couple of ways. You can look at it through engagement. You can look at it through, you know, you can look at it from a talent acquisition perspective. You know, if folks, what's your retention level, or if you do like a yearly survey and you look at like engagement and you know, sort of cross that with like people who are ERGs. That's one of the ways you can look at it. Then you can look at it from like a commerce lens, and you can see, okay, are the ERGs partnering with your business at all, and is that contributing at all to you know, like greater sales, or just you know, more success in that field.
Thank you, Ron. Great observations there. Yeah, just an FYI, one of the best case studies I know of how to make an ERG really function, or a way to tap into the strength and power they can bring, is Frito-Lay. And they've got tortilla chips now around the world, different flavors that were generated out of the respective ERGs. And that has added materially to their bottom line, I know. You know, there's stuff happening in Thailand, and I think Japan and India, and of course, I think the first one were lime flavored Doritos out of Mexico. So, anyone else want to take a whack at the ERG question?
I can just quickly. I think ERG and employee networks, as we call them at State Street, are synonymous, right? And in the corporate landscape, they actually are the original allies. If you think about the role of the ERGs and why people gravitate towards finding that community. And so ERGs became the voice of the unheard, became the vehicle by which, you know, we could raise issues and we could ask for support, or we could, you know, commiserate together, right? And sort of say, and again, using that term, conspire to how do we help this organization become better at creating a better culture. So from an allyship perspective, you know, whether you have an ally ERG or an employee network, or all of your networks are in fact allies to not only each other, but act on behalf of their members to further their agendas and their I guess, wants. I think that's what they do. In terms of how effective they are, there are a number of now newer studies that point to the great, I would say, value add that these networks have for companies. They help with employee engagement. They help with employee retention. They provide career opportunities to the members and visibility opportunities for the members' skill sets that they may not have and that may not be able to acquire in their day-to-day jobs. They can try their hand at these things through serving on an employee network committee, or chairing a network, managing budgets, you know, putting together events, et cetera. So I think, you know, from that perspective, and you know, and we are getting better and better and better at measuring the effectiveness of these networks. We, in particularly at State Street, use what we call the 4C model, which I know has been adopted by many other organizations. Dr. Robert Rodriguez has been a great partner to us in this work, and I think through that, through those efforts, we've been able to really focus our employee networks. And the last two things I will say in terms of how the employee networks help to drive allyship is through their you know, career sort of focus in terms of how they provide mentorship and sponsorship opportunities to their members. And I think that that's huge. And you know, most sponsorship programs that happen organically happen through the employee networks, and that's how employees tend to get great exposure to senior executives, great exposure to career opportunities, great advice, and ultimately, hopefully what you want to see is that sponsorship happen, and that is all activated by the employee network. So I think that, you know, if, you know, any of the, you know, nearly 60 folks who are in this call aren't members or aren't active participants of that employee network, you know, sort of structure, if they have it in your workplaces, I think that you're missing out on a lot of great things that happen there. So that's my 2 cents to add.
Awesome. And just a real quick follow-on question. Any like, may not be cathartic or all that mind-blowing, but any tricks that you've found that are effective to get people from other communities, other cultural backgrounds, whatever, to join or at least try out a new ERG? Because there could be some hesitancy there, right? Walking into a room, if you're the only person of whatever background, it can be a bit, you know, well, I suppose balancing.
Maybe one suggestion that I could make, and it's worked well at Liberty Mutual, is we're now getting to the point where managers are working with their teams and saying, tell me about your passions, tell me about issues that are bothering you, and have you considered joining an ERG, and can you commit the time to joining the ERG? And then the manager also commits to giving that employee time in their day to dedicate certain hours to the ERG as part of their overall growth and their overall contribution to the company. So I think when managers are that proactive, and I would say it's even more important at the line manager level than it is the senior manager level, that will really help permeate the message and give people the comfort that, hey, this is something that's expected of me. and I'm a human being and I have passions and I've seen injustices and I want to help. And so I think that's one trick, if you want to use that word, that I've seen employed that can help.
That's great, Frank. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything?
Good afternoon. It's Roberto. Another idea is also to include ERGs as part of folks' performance plans or performance appraisals, so that there's more of an invested interest in them being involved, and it's something that they are contributing to as well as to the culture of the organization. So that was just another thought.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Okay. Moving on, Roberto, I want to get to you in more detail here now. Next theme is talent acquisition. Talent acquisition is absolutely key in filling the pipeline at all levels with diverse and inclusive talent. And it has been said that the fastest way to evolve cultures to be more inclusive, et cetera, is to hire managers with those characteristics. Do you see allies having a role in these processes? And do you have any means to assess a candidate's inclusiveness? And I'll start with you, Roberto.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when it comes to allyship, I think one of the reasons that there's a need for it is the fact that there's a lack of representation of the group that you'd like to see more of at your organization. So allies absolutely play a role in supporting the diversification of a company. That includes, we spoke about ERGs, participating in the ERGs, understanding what the major issues that impact the communities and how they may potentially be contributing to the issues as well. So that definitely plays a part as far as allyship. It's also important to include diverse individuals in the recruitment process as far as the selection, because studies have shown if you have one diverse candidate or one female candidate compared to two other finalists that are from white or Caucasian background, the likelihood of them getting hired is really slim. So increasing the numbers and also understanding that part of building that management pipeline is invested time into at the college level, all the way cultivating it through the entire organization. And so I think that's one way that could be supported by the allies and as well as by an organization. They have to have a vested interest. It needs to be part of their employment branding. And they need to be participating in events similar to this, like Alpha. There are affinity groups that already exist at the national level at this scale that you'll be able to speak about your company culture. You'll be able to speak about what your value proposition is for individuals. And in that light, that'll also help recruit more diverse talent.
Awesome, Roberto. And any comments there on the people who they actually meet as well in the interview process?
Yeah, I think
also in the compensation setting part of the process as well.
Well, so in Massachusetts, they passed the MEPA law where, you can't, when you're making wage decisions, it cannot be based on gender. So that's something that, I think is really important and we take seriously at Harvard University. There's been changes to our comp structures to ensure that we're being a fair and equitable employer. So that's, it starts with your comp team and the human resources arm of that section. And I'm sorry, what was the other piece? What was the other question?
Oh, just in terms of you mentioned diverse candidates, but having diverse interviewers, for example.
Oh, absolutely. And that's another opportunity to include your ERGs in the interviewing process, especially if you want someone to have a candid, authentic interaction with your company. Even in the work that I do as a senior talent diversity sourcer, I find individuals feeling more comfortable having candid dialogues with me than with a hiring manager, and they'll ask me questions about the company culture, would they be accepted or not, and what my personal experience has been. So I think ERGs play a huge role in being able to identify talent, especially if your company does not have a relationship with the groups that you're trying to recruit.
Awesome. Paul, I know you come from a talent acquisition background. Anything to add here?
Everything that Roberto has said is spot on. I think, one of the things that it's underused and undervalued is representation during the interview process. And so representation not only, of your talent acquisition team and who shows up, whether it's to on-campus recruitment activities or, professional networking events, et cetera, but, the diversity of the interviewing team and diversity ultimately of the senior leadership team. And, there's a anecdote that our former CEO used to convey to us, which is, there was a company that will go unnamed, West Coast-based big firm that had a very senior female executive interviewing for one of their roles. And throughout her interview experience, she interviewed with, I believe it was something like 20 people at the organization, and 20 white males. And so, then they did a wonderful job of pitching her on why this would be a great opportunity for her and, why she should join the team. And they went, the wine and dine her, and they thought they had this hire. And to their shock, she declined the offer. And, in the postmortem, when they were asking her, well, can you share with us, everything, the job that you want, the title that you want, we offered it to you, the comp that you wanted, we offered it to you. So, what was it about the process that, or about our company that you don't think that this is a great opportunity? And she said, well, I looked around, I talked to 20 people. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak to that many people, but not one of them looked like me. And, it was sort of like this aha moment for the CEO of the organization to say, holy cow, like how could we have missed that? And, and we need to do better, right? In terms of, who do we put in front of folks to really truly represent the culture, that really truly represent. Now, if you don't have it, is one thing. But if you do have it and you miss that opportunity, it's another. And I think in this case, it was both. They didn't have it, and they didn't have the representation, but they missed the opportunity to at least make an attempt to say, do you want to talk to someone, that could potentially be a mentee to you, or someone who, has been in this organization that, and she sees. And what the dynamics are between, being a female in this company, et cetera. So, there are ways in which you can sort of at least show that culturally you're sensitized to how this person may perceive your organization. And I do feel that most organizations sort of miss out on being very strategic about how you present your organization to external talent. So, but Roberto had covered a lot of the basic points of, diversity recruiting 101, I guess, right?
And I think to add on, if you don't have the representation as an organization, own it and let the individuals know that this is something that you want to work towards. And there's some folks that they'll love that. That would be a great recruiting opportunity where it's like, you know what? All right, I will be a pioneer. I will go and delve into the unknown, and I'll be the spark to help impact the culture at this organization. So that's just another idea.
Well, and this, I mean, over the course of time, you have to keep your pipeline filled, and your talent pipeline and also your candidate pipelines full of qualified people, the best people for the job, right? My business partner worked at JP Morgan, his first job out of college on the trading floor there. So he shared a story with me. JP Morgan sent a team of 10 people to visit their largest client to do a big deal, to present a big deal to them. Turns out there was a new CFO. She was a woman. All the guys who were visiting were men. They walk in the room. She said, sorry, gentlemen, I'm not going to talk to anybody from JP Morgan until I see at least one woman on your team. So it can, and this is a big deal, right? So just want to call out, it's all about laying seeds, in a manner of speaking, and watching them grow. So moving on, next theme is training. Many men want to help, but for a variety of reasons, they are reluctant to sign up. And many who do feel unprepared or can feel unprepared. Do effective allies need training? What should it cover if you think so? And what from your POV is the most important attribute in being an effective ally? And Ron, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Awesome question. So I think, at Liberty Mutual, we have these guidelines for inclusion, and like one of the guidelines for inclusion is, be aware of intent versus impact, and assume positive intent. And so I think it's important right now to assume positive intent, because I think that is what so many, I'll practice self-focus, or at least me, like I want to be there, and I want to be a, not just like a body, but I want to be like affecting change or helping. But along with that, I think a lot of men are afraid that they're going to step in it, or are afraid that like they're going to say the wrong thing. So when I think about training, I think it is about a couple of things. It's about, one, it's about education. So it's about like helping teach them, oh, you may have been raised to think that, this phrase was okay. You know what, today it's not okay. Two, it is about learning to be comfortable with discomfort. So it is knowing that even if you don't want to step in it, you're gonna step in it. And what you need to do is you just need to apologize and move on. And three, and this is a big one for me, who I say, I like to jokingly say, hi, my name's Ron, I'm a mansplainer, is you need to step back and you need to listen. And that is like such a key component of allyship, is just not wanting to fix, not wanting to go and like solve the problem. I think particularly with men, like we're conditioned, a little bit to be problem solvers and maybe not so much as listeners, painting with a broad brush, obviously. So I think like those key things, like education, feeling okay with discomfort, and just being okay with listening, are really keys to success there.
Awesome, Ron. Love it. Love it. Frank, anything to add there? I saw you shaking your head up and down.
Yeah, a couple things. Ron covered a couple of awesome points. The listening point especially, I think, is super important. And then I think in all of the, especially when you have one-on-ones or small group sessions, to be authentic and to show humility. I think when you're dealing with these types of situations, you have to understand that the person that you're mentoring is probably super nervous and probably sees you as having a much higher title or position, and therefore might not be that comfortable. So if you can kind of approach it from a listening, authentic and humility approach, I think that's going to allow you to be a much better ally and kind of deliver the support that people are ultimately looking for.
Yeah, that's a great point, Frank. And I'd want to add to that it's a bit of a two-way street in that respect. Like if I take off my ally hat and I put on, I'm co-chair for like the national for the company's LGBTQ plus group. So if I like put on my LGBTQ plus hat, there is it's about creating an environment of trust there, so that if you have someone who's nervous and like just doesn't want to step in it, is letting them know that we're getting through this together, and if you happen to like make a misstep, like we're that's okay. Like essentially creating that environment that they feel it's okay to to test and learn a little bit, and know that they might not get it 100% right.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny to me. There's a software saying, fail fast, fail often, right?
Yeah.
and the whole sort of, lean principles are all about failing fast. But, when it comes to interpersonal stuff and communications, people can just clam up, well, like clams. So I've often pushed people, say, hey, just open up your mind a little bit to apply stuff you use every day to your communications. So great. This is awesome, awesome content, guys. My next theme is successes and failures. So the local dominant culture in Boston has embedded historical roots. What from your experiences is working and how allies are shifting these cultures? What has failed? What might be in process that you are waiting to measure? Open question.
So Lola, just trying to get clarification of the question. So how do we break through some of the historical context and or sort of ties to how historically, not hysterically, but historically, you could argue that sometimes hysterically, but historically, society has, put some shackles on how people should stay in certain places. I'm just kind of paraphrasing, I guess, what you're trying to say. And I think what I've seen lately work really well is just, there's this now sense, and this is brought about, I think, it's a generational shift in terms of what people are willing to accept and what people are willing to put up with. And, so this sort of activism that's happening both outside and inside of our organizations, I think is very effective. I think that, disrupting, right, what the sort of constructs have been, whether social and whether, and most of them obviously are artificial. So just as we constructed, separatism and racism and, sexism, it can be deconstructed if you have sort of the right mindset, mind frame, and willingness to do so. So, and I think, what I'm seeing is that just people are just not willing to accept the status quo as fact and or as the law of the land, and they are more willing to ask why. Well, why is that? Right. And, and if, as we all sort of strive towards building a more equitable society, we need to continue to ask why. Right. I mean, we need to continue to sort of challenge to say, well, just because it's historically been done that way or historically been addressed this way doesn't mean it's right. So can we find, a better way, a different way? And I think that I'm starting to see a lot more of that. And again, I will, as much as our millennials get knocked upon as being this, entitled, and that's not my personal opinion, but this entitled generation, I will give them credit because they are sort of asking the why. Well, why should I, sort of adhere to this hierarchical, way of thinking, or this patriarchal head of way of thinking, or this masculine approach to things versus, sort of saying, no, this is not about those constructs anymore. So I know I'm being a little bit out there in terms of, my answer, but I just think that asking why the activism, the not having to just sit there and take it and accept it and this is when allyship really comes handy, right? Because you don't want to be the one person sticking your neck out there. Rather, you want to bring others that are like-minded to say, hey, let's figure this out. Let's solve it together. It's just not right.
Paul, I'm so glad to hear that, but my data points are giving me the same kind of feedback. I'd like to actually transition, I'll maybe come back to this theme a little bit, but I want to stay with you, Paul, for a little bit. My next theme was intersectionality, because you made a great segue to this, I think. Do you believe you personally have needed to approach allyship differently coming from a non-dominant culture? And do you find it has hindered your efforts at all? And I think, has a rise of, for example, #BLM changed things? I think you just said it has, which is great. But
oh, it absolutely has. And what it has, so when it comes to intersectionality, right, and if you think about it, just like anything else, the concept of intersectionality began, as a way to sort of denote how Black women are, sort of at the bottom of the pecking order when it comes to issues, right? So they get impacted by sexism, they get impacted by racism, how we are not defined or identified by one identity, right? That we are multi identity, and we have different things that we intersect with. So as a man of color, I've had to actually do a lot more thinking about the privilege that I bring being male, right? And the fact that in society gives me a different sort of access, privilege, et cetera, pecking order, even though I'm a man of color. Well, in the pecking order in terms of this intersectionality piece, right? I don't get the sexism part of things sometimes, right? I may get genderism, right? But I don't get the traditional, binary sexism definition. So I think we all have to sort of figure out where we sit and where, as males, and whether we are dominant class males or not. How do we and how do we become allies in a better way to women of all backgrounds, right? But especially to our sisters that are Latinx and Black and other minority groups, because the way that they feel the intersectionality is a lot more acute, because there are many other sort of identities that they have to sort of contend with that are not necessarily part of the dominant class.
Beautiful. I heard you, Paul, by the way. Thank you.
No, I know you did.
Yeah. Ron or Roberto, anything to add there on the intersectionality theme?
I think the intersectionality it helps me in understanding the importance of allyship. I mean, first generation immigrant, Latinx background, being raised in the inner city, it's a bunch of boxes that I can check off. And I just understand the plight of, trying to navigate through waters or through an environment that you don't necessarily understand the culture. And it's been something that now that I find myself in my role in talent acquisition and trying to advocate for individuals throughout the entire spectrum, individuals with disabilities, veterans and such, I think it just gives me a little bit more empathy, compassion, and I do challenge my colleagues and my hiring managers to just see things from a different perspective. Key phrase is transferable skills. All right, there might be a typo or a spacing issue on that cover letter, but do you see what the value that this person can bring? Are you willing to at least have a conversation? And I think being able to push the envelope a little bit more and challenge hiring managers is much more effective because of my just my background and my understanding of, it's not easy to open up doors sometimes, and it's also not easy to be the only one of being the only Latino male in a room, or even having a diversity in my title and not wanting to be tokenized. So I completely understand. And I will also admit that, to Paul's point, that as a male, there are privileges that I have, and I have to understand those things. And I need to know when when to just sit back, listen, and in other cases, just get out of the way and let others lead.
And Roberto, to your point, I mean, it's actually more acute sometimes in minority households because the male is held to a different and higher standard, even more so in the Latino households, right? So if you're the older brother or the only brother, there is a certain status and privilege that even your parents sort of exacerbate. And that happens in Latino, Black, and other type of households. So it's the cultural nuances, are even deeper within some of our communities.
Ron, something to add?
Yeah, I just think I would just add on to Paul and Roberto's comments just about recognizing privilege and almost recognizing like it doubly so, you know, in some respects. I, you know, sometimes I think intersectionality is for allies who maybe like aren't as far in their journey. It's like a little bit of D&I 2.0. It's like you recognize, okay, here are all the challenges that say like a person of color faces. And now here are all the challenges that say like a woman faces. Now put those two together and think about like what that experience is. And you know, I found in situations like this is it's helpful to like speak to an ally when you're talking to an ally, is see if there are any times where they have felt like a member of like a historically excluded group. And you try and get them to remember, okay, do you remember what that feeling is like? Okay, now try living that like every single day, you know, as someone, because it's really what you're trying to do is you're just trying to build empathy. You know, you're trying to make sure that like people understand we're different and we don't all come from the same backgrounds, and that's okay, but just try and like put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to embark on my mystery theme, panelists. Let me share my screen here real quickly. And hold on. Yes. Oh boy. Oh boy. Hold on. This may not work. Okay. Let's try this. No. Oh boy. I'm sorry. I just got a new laptop and my screen's not, I can't share my screen. However, I can maybe walk you all through it. So there's a model out there called the stereotype content model, and it measures how we are perceived by others. On the y-axis, we have warmth. On the x-axis, we have competence. And there are four classic sort of, you know, four bucket matrix going on there. In the high warmth, high competence, these are people that society in general terms tend to admire. And they include, and I'm just pulling stuff out, this has been done thousands of times, people like Christians, the middle class, middle management, and entrepreneurs. Low warmth, high competence, these are people tend to envy. They include executives, the rich, Brits, and Asians. High warmth, low competence are demographics people tend to pity. Housewives, social workers, and teachers sort of span pity and admiration there. Low warmth, low competence, these are demographics people are disgusted by. They include the homeless, the unemployed, and many politicians. Now, this model was applied to male allies. And I can't, well, I'll let you know where they landed in the pity bucket. So high warmth, low competence. And I see this as a real big sort of constraint to really making the workplace and the world a better experience for everybody. It's the sort of this societal bias that male allies, yeah, you know, we're warm and fuzzy, but we really just can't get stuff done, right? Question to you all, maybe starting with Frank though, how do you think we can move the male allies from the pity bucket to the admiration bucket? If that makes sense at all.
Yeah, I guess I've never thought of myself in the pity bucket. So let me just kind of contemplate that for a minute. But I think what that tells me, or at least how I'm processing that, is we need to make certain that the allies, we're kind of picking a wide variety of allies to participate so that we're not being generalized and we're not seen in some category that would be associated with pity. And it's probably like the last thing I'd ever associate myself with. So that's why I'm probably reacting a little bit viscerally to the comment. But and when I think of kind of what we've done at Liberty, and I hope all organizations think about this, is really intentionally select and recruit allies that you think are going to have a certain amount of goodwill or credibility or business savvy to them, so that the organization sees that that's kind of an aspirational place to be, and not something to be pitied, or not something to be say, oh yeah, that's not for your fast moving, hard charging executives. That's for people that are on the slow track, or they're worried about warm and fuzzy things. They don't know how to run a P&L or anything like that. So.
Right. Exactly. Great answer. Anyone else want to chip in?
Yeah, I'd build on that, and I think it mirrors kind of what we were talking about earlier, where male allies have great intent, but they don't know what to do with it. So I think it is about and this is on us. Like, this isn't something that anyone else needs to solve. I just want to be clear about that. Is like, it's incumbent upon men, like male allies, to feel empowered and to feel enabled that if they don't know something, they should go and learn about it. And once they feel like they have more of a solid footing, is to move forward then in your ally journey, is to take that leap. Kind of, maybe sometimes you do have to leap before you look. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, I mean, like Frank, I'm having a completely visceral reaction to the model, and I love to see it and find out who's behind this research. Clearly, there's some dominant bias there, but I don't consider male allies, or I don't picture and envision male allies as that, and I don't know what the sort of underlying data goes behind determining competence or determining warmth. The male allies that I happen to know happen to be both. That there's no, those terms are not mutually exclusive, right? Doesn't mean it's not either or. And it can be both and. So you can be competent, you can be really good at what you do, but you could also be a good person, right? And try to be, try to advance society in a good way. So I don't just, again, I haven't seen what that research is or report, but I'd be hard pressed to think or to bucket all male allies as that. So. Again, in my personal experience, the ones that I've known have been both there. And when we think about own organizations and people, who are, I can think of, Dennis Flanwell at Liberty Mutual, right? And I think of him as an ally. And I dare someone tell me that he's not competent, or Tim Sweeney, or any of the other leaders there that I've known for a while to be great male allies. And when I think about an organization, I think of the same way, my CEO and some of his direct reports. So again, just my 2 cents on that particular mystery question. That's an interesting one, Laura. So.
Thanks, Paul.
Kept us guessing.
Roberto, anything to add to finish with, or?
I think it all goes back to, like Paul said, being a good person. Society is shifting. Technology is making information much more accessible for individuals. So I think individuals' threshold of accepting things just for the way they are is declining over time. So as far as male allies, I could see, depending on the research, why we could be potentially seen on the pity spectrum, just because some men, including myself, there's much more education that we can do on these topics. I don't experience the issues that women experience on a day-to-day basis. And I also potentially contribute to some of the issues that folks experience on a day-to-day as well. So I think with more education, with more enthusiasm and curiosity, and just trying to understand one another and the intersectionalities and how we have more in common than not, I think that'll over time hopefully shift us from just the pity aisle to just being good people, individuals that are valued for a company. And you know, I was reading a Forbes article, and you know, cultural and diversity competency is one of the highly sought after skills going into 2025. So those are the people that will thrive, and they will change that spectrum. And we'll talk again in 5 years.
Love it. Love it. I'd love to do this again in 5 years.
Be great.
So a closing question. We got 3 great questions from our audience, but a real quick closing question for the panel. What is one key takeaway or observation or comment you'd like to leave us all with today?
I can probably go first, and I can't take full ownership of this. I've copied it from a previous manager, and that I was in an international group within Liberty at the time, and I hadn't done much traveling overseas. And he said, remember one thing, that brains have been equally distributed across the world to all different types of people, color, ethnicity. And just remember that when you're out visiting other countries. And I thought that was a remarkable pearl of wisdom that I've carried with me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Frank.
That's just to build on that. The second part of that is that opportunity just hasn't been equally distributed, right? So what can we do as male allies to make sure that our female colleagues, friends, etc., enjoy the opportunities that perhaps, you know, are not presented to them as readily as they are presented to us as males. And so, you know, how do we, as allies, continue to, you know, be vulnerable, but be courageous around the fact that, you know, we can, in fact, help and amplify their voices. You know, and oftentimes, you know, the other thing I would say is that, you know, we should not assume, and we should not take on the role of male allies from a place of thinking that we are the stronger or the strongest, you know, person in that equation. You know, when we try to quote unquote help someone versus sort of thinking of this as a partnership and think of this as, you know, by me, you know, being an active ally, we are actually both bettering our chances. We are actually both advancing. We're making the world a better place. But I shouldn't necessarily come at it from, I know more, I can do more, you know, and I'm here to teach you or to protect you or to help you. And I think that that's one thing that I would believe with those of us males who, as males who may be thinking and bringing that into the equation.
Awesome, Paul. Thank you. Roberto.
Yeah, these are just final thoughts, right, that I have for folks. So I think investing time into your interpersonal development is really important. Imposter syndrome is real. I think everyone experiences it throughout all levels of their career path, their career trajectory. And in my work, I get the opportunity to speak to folks all the way from entry-level roles all the way up to C-suite. And, you know, the best leaders are the ones who feel comfortable being vulnerable, who own who they are, and who have a good understanding of what success means, because that's subjective. Success is different for everyone. And also being mindful of who you allow to mentor you. I think that's really important. Because, you know, just because someone's in a certain title doesn't necessarily mean that their values are aligned with yours. So understanding your core values and just surrounding yourself with people that are your champions, that will challenge you, that will encourage you to take on those new challenges as well, and see challenges as opportunities. I think those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. And, you know, it's the best advice I could give someone. Just own who you are.
Beautiful, Roberto. Ron.
So I'll give strategic and a tactical, because I like to do both. So the strategic is just, or just like the big picture one is just practice empathy, you know, is, you know, just remember, especially like during this time, that you know, different, like folks are bringing like a whole weight of things to their day. And so if we can just, you know, see if we can try on like their perspective and like really think about where someone's coming from, I think that that helps maybe bridge the gap sometimes where there are some. And then on the tactical level, like maybe how you do that is to like pause. So like if you find yourself thinking, you know, like going to a thought of like frustration or going, you know, to a more negative thought, like is like pause and kind of like ask yourself like where you're going and inquire a little bit, like is, you know, am I practicing empathy, or you know, what's the reason why I'm like going there.
Beautiful, Ron. Okay, great. So we've got a few questions here really quickly in our last gasps of time here. First quick question, this is open to everybody. What are best practices each of you do to make space for your counterparts that are women?
This is going to be a twofer. I can answer both the first one and the second one because
great.
it's the same. So it is it's about listening. You know, it's about listening, and then it's about believing what you hear. So I think, you know, too often it is like you know, thinking, you know, to Paul's point, is like we want to come in and we want to solve, or we want to like come and give the answer. Nope. It's like we are here to listen. And then when you listen, don't dismiss it, or don't try and distinguish, or don't try and say, well, yeah, that's different. It's like listen and believe like what someone is saying. Like even if like that doesn't, like you're like, no, but it's different. Nope. Like that's someone's experience, and like that's valid.
Frank, something to add to that, or?
I guess I'd add to Ron's comment and say, listen and also understand that your experience may not be similar to someone else's, and that could be due to your own circumstances, the color of your skin, what your gender is. So don't automatically say, oh yeah, I can put myself in their shoes, because you probably can't. So you should listen and try to understand the best you can, but don't assume that you can get all the way there into someone else's experiences.
Great. Another question. Do you believe that the culture is shifting when it comes to the view of gender roles in the workplace, social space, etc.?
Absolutely. I think the time is now. You know, especially with this cultural and social movements that are happening, I think now is the time to be unapologetic, to push forward. And, you know, you're seeing even initiatives for women-owned businesses. They're receiving federal grants. You have diversity suppliers, companies that are working to build more diversities for their contracts and any other contracted work that they have. So absolutely, I would not believe what society and what the media is saying. I think times have shifted. There's individuals over time that have set the stage for us, and you know, it would not be well suited for all the sacrifices they made if we don't keep pushing the torch forward. So I think now is the time.
I think general sentiment has shifted. I think in regards to actual practice, especially when it comes to women of color and Black and Latinx women, not quite yet, right? So the diversity programs have benefited women, but it's been shown that it's been mainly white women, and so I think that we still have a lot of work to do as far as ensuring that you know, the opportunity and the access is equally distributed among all women, including and more specifically women of color. There's still more work to do there, but in terms of, you know, traditional paternalistic attitudes, I think that's obviously slowly breaking away, but there's still some work there.
Fantastic. Thank you. I want to thank all my panelists from the bottom of my heart for your time and attention and the gift of your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for having us.
And I want to thank
Thank you.
all of you also on behalf of Women of Alpha and this wonderful Latina Summit. Lawler, you did an amazing job. All of you, you shared so many great things. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I want to invite all of our attendees. We're starting now the next session with Nina Vaca. She's our keynote for the day. So if you want to see her, I just put on the chat room a link where you can get the link to that next session. Thank you all again for being here today. Thank you, Paul, Roberto, Ron, Frank, Lawler. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Conference.